Good afternoon to our listeners. Welcome once again to one of our podcasts. It's the Flight of the Champions coming to you from Victoria Falls. And today I'm very pleased to tell you that we have a special guest from the United States. That's Frank McLaughlin. Many of you know Frank. Uh, he's um, he's been in the sport for many years, and he's a well-known pigeon fancier. He's a shipper of pigeons and has shipped for the big races for some time. And he also has an auction site, Best Pigeons, which he sells a lot of really good top quality pigeons on that website. Now, in addition to that, Frank has a YouTube channel. Now, anyone that wants to log into it, they can find it on the internet, and it's under Frank McLaughlin. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Frank. How do people find your YouTube clip?
I mean, I guess it's McLaughlin Lofts. McLaughlin Lofts. And I'm sure Frank McLaughlin will bring it to my YouTube channel also.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So that's McLaughlin Lofts, and what Frank does on that channel is he has thousands of viewers and subscribers, and he has some very interesting information about pigeon racing in general. This podcast that we're doing is more specifically about one loft racing and and Victoria Falls in particular. So we're going to touch on a few topics here, but just as a preamble, before we do that, there's often a misconception as to where we are and what we do. Now, to give everyone an idea of that, Zimbabwe is a landlocked country in Africa. There are 54 countries in Africa. It's a huge continent, and it covers 3 million square kilometers. Sorry, 30 million square kilometers, which is, for the benefit of those people that work in miles, it's 11.7 million square miles. Now, the United States is a huge country, and I know a lot of the viewers are from the USA, but to try and give you an idea of that, it's the United States is one third of the size of Africa. So, as many people that enter races in Africa, traditionally they've been entering races in South Africa, and they think that many of them are confused as to where it is. South Africa is south of Zimbabwe, and it has a lot of pigeon fanciers and very well known for its one loft racing. But we're a separate country completely. So the difficulties that one may face getting pigeons into South Africa doesn't really affect Zimbabwe. So I think people should realize that. I know there are a number of people think that shipping to Africa is difficult, but it's not difficult to Zimbabwe. So I want you to understand that as well. Um, this last season, we've had quite a lot of difficulty, extraordinarily high, actually, bringing pigeons in because some of the birds are routed through South Africa, although we do have direct routes, but they've had an unprecedented AI challenge, and that has made everybody nervous. And when I say AI, we're talking about avian influenza. Has made our veterinary department and disease control a little bit more cautious about imports. So that has impacted to quite a large extent on us. People have been wary about and afraid of long periods in quarantine because the birds can't move around as freely as they would normally move. So other than that, we we don't really have shipping issues or problems that we face. Now, just back um, to Frank. Thank you, first of all, Frank, for joining us after that long spiel. We're really pleased that you could come in. So I'll ask you specific questions. Now, you have been entering one-lot races in many places, and particularly in Africa. is the one we need to really concentrate on. And can you sort of mention your experiences with one lot racing in Africa?
Well, for me, I got interested in the $1 million race in South Africa. It was at the time, it was the Sun City $1 million race. And that was my first, step into international one lot racing. Along with, I started the exporting to that race. So that was my first introduction back over 20 years ago now. And I love Africa, especially Zimbabwe. I mean, every trip has been just super for myself, and I've taken the family multiple times. But I have been involved for over 20 years with races in Africa.
No, I think it would be true to say that the races here are different to those that you'd find on the continent and also in the United States in many respects. But we do find it particularly difficult, and a lot of people have found it difficult. So, I mean, from that point of view, what do you really think makes it that much more difficult?
I mean, it's difficult in the U.S. The races are fairly easy for the most part. I mean, the country is, except for a couple of mountain ranges, the country's flat. And it seems like one lot racing in the U.S. is pretty easy. Now, in Zimbabwe, it seems like there's, whether there's more obstacles, but it takes a tough pigeon. It takes a pigeon with endurance, and, with the series and the training. I don't know, it's a special animal that can compete in Zimbabwe. And I guess we're trying to always figure out why it's so difficult there. But I know your final race usually is not easy, and the best birds will shine in the final, which makes it exciting. Nobody wants to see 40 birds on a drop, which we do see occasionally here in the U.S., big drops very fast, and makes for a lot of happy people. But in the long run, when you're dividing the prize amongst 40 or 50 birds, it's no big deal.
Frank, we're talking about the fact that it suits some pigeons and not others. Of course, that's what we try and select. We're trying to find good birds that can race in these conditions. So not everyone wants to race in these sort of conditions. But in any event, we were lucky enough to have you grade the pigeons after the final race for sale. What were your impressions of the birds that actually made the grade?
Well, I handled the top several hundred, and I was impressed. The feather quality was like the birds never raced. And they went through such a tough series and such a long period of training and right through, and the health and condition and the feather quality is what impressed me more than anything. I didn't expect it. I expected dry, worn feathers, and the feather was really perfect on all the pigeons. The health was very impressive, and majority of the birds seemed to be yellow-eyed pigeons, which I thought was interesting also. A lot of yellows, some pearls. And most of the birds that scored were, medium size, but there were some right in the top 10. There were some large pigeons. Again, I didn't expect to see a bigger pigeon perform and score in the final, but there were some pigeons that were good size. So I was pleasantly surprised and also lucky enough to see the quality. The birds that finished, every bird that finished really had excellent qualities and health, and impressive group.
Now, would you say that a lot of that is to do with actual genetics that's put those birds up in that bracket rather than just the actual management of the loft? It's the genetics we're looking for quality pigeons. Would that sort of translate into the feather quality and the muscles and so on that you saw?
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because I've said for years that like one lot racing is genetics racing, because they're all under the same conditions. And yes, I think that the highest quality birds with the best genetics, the best feather that could take the training and the conditioning and the work probably are the ones that performed and did the best of the race. So yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the cream came to the top, and that's what everybody is striving for. And I've seen, whereas you bring birds through a quarantine, like into the U.S., and they're quarantined for several months, and some of them bounce out of the quarantine like the day they went in, they're perfect. Others look like rags. Just some pigeons don't have the constitution or the genetics to take whatever they're up against. So a lot of it is the genetics, but you also have to do the conditioning and the care that you provide on that end.
Well, what we found over the years is that it's not the bottom end of the line in terms of cost. People have been more selective, and I think realizing also that it's not that easy. I think quality of the birds is improving, which is pleasing for us. I wanted to ask you about the shipping, Frank. With your expertise in shipping and the many years you've done it, what sort of pointers do you think are relevant to people that are breeding birds and sending them? And of course, it would apply everywhere, but more particularly in the United States, where you've got a postal service and birds are in that basket sometimes 2 or 3 days and so on. What would you say needs to be done with those birds before you ship them?
Well, like for the U.S. fanciers, I advocate that they only have maybe 6 weeks with the pigeons. So the best possible care has to be given to the breeders, the vitamins, the minerals. Like the youngster has to have everything it needs. The other thing, which I feel is most important, would be the paramyxo virus vaccine. And more recently, I've been pushing the PMV rota vaccine. And a lot of the one-off races here in the U.S. have been having very good luck using the PMV rota combination. So before you send them off race, you want to make sure that you've at least vaccinated one time, maybe around weaning with the PMV and rota vaccine, or at the least the PMV vaccine. And then don't ship them too young. Many of the fanciers like to send them too young to the one-off races. I suggest usually not before 6 weeks old to send them to the exporter. Let them build some natural immunity. Let them get stronger before you send them to the exporter. And it really helps with the whole process.
We sort of limited here to one-lot racing, and your contribution is great. I really appreciate that. And just for the viewers' benefit, I watch your YouTube clips. They're really, really good, and it covers all aspects. So if people want to know about pigeon racing in general, you speak to Frank, and he answers it. He takes questions, and so it's quite nice. It's interactive in that respect. With regards to Victoria Falls, if you do have any questions, you drop us a line. You can do it on our info thing, and just send us an email, and we will attempt to answer any of those questions. And it'll be actually useful to have that. If you have questions on these podcasts, Fly to the Champions, we will address them when we've got a few together. But just going back to Frank, if you get hold of him, you will learn a lot, I can tell you. I mean, I certainly have, and I appreciate it, and I thank you for that, Frank. In conclusion, I want to just ask, Victoria Falls is well known as a holiday venue, and you've been here, I think, 3 times. I just want to touch on that for a second, because it's on it should be on most people's bucket lists. And, we really go the extra mile to try and entertain people when they come to our final race. And so, I mean, your experience of that, Frank, and your recommendations to the listeners about coming to Victoria Falls and to our final.
Well, for me, I tell, all the Americans, and I tell everybody worldwide, if they're listening to me, that you have to enter the race once and go, because you won't regret it. I mean, I always enjoy South Africa, but I love Zimbabwe much more now than South Africa. The people are so friendly. Victoria Falls is an amazing, whatever wonder of the world it is. To see the falls alone is incredible. The race, you guys put on an event where we all feel like family, and it's intimate and it's personal and it's first class, and I love it. My family loves it. I took my son alone this year, and he's hoping to come back next year. But yeah, there's nothing like it. Everybody should have their bucket list to see the big game, to be on the Zambezi River, and the hospitality and the people are just wonderful. And everybody has to do it at least once, and I advocate that. And most people think it's far or they're afraid. And Zimbabwe is a lot safer than the USA, if you can believe it. And you should go and definitely give it a try if you're out there thinking about it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Frank. Everyone says, is it safe? And my answer to that, it's not safe if you walk around at night and walk into an elephant. But I mean, in terms of the people, it's really safe. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the biggest fear with a lot of international travelers, that they have a misconception that it might not be safe. And you're right. The only worry would be you can't be wandering around at night because of the animals, because the animals are part of, they're just they're there, and you never know what you're going to see, which makes it so much more exciting. But yeah, a wonderful destination, and we love it. I'll be back again this summer. I'm hoping that I can take a pile of Americans with me, because, they'll be thrilled if they go.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, just for the viewers' benefit, we've got a lodge on our property, which was built by my partner, but it's really part of us. And we have that thing entirely booked out for our race week, but the space is limited. And we're having to really twist the manager's arm to keep us rooms, because there's quite a lot of interest. Since COVID came to an end, everyone has this idea they must travel. And, some of the places are booked up 2 years in advance now. So for us to block out a week in the middle of that, it's not an easy ask. But anyway, that's what it is. So if you want to, you drop us a line and you can book in, and hopefully we will have space for you. But we certainly will try and make alternative plans if we fill up. So I think that really is the end of it for us for today, Frank. I want to once again thank you for joining us on Flight of the Champions, and we really hope that people enjoyed this particular episode, and please remember to tune in to our social media channels, the podcast. There are a number of podcasts available to look at. If you go onto our website and click up on the top bar, there's a green tab that says podcast. Click on that, and it has all the podcasts that we've done over the last 12 weeks. So we'll continue to do that as long as we have material we can talk about. And until next time, thank you and bye for now.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I hope we do it again sometime.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.